welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. It is TJ, your host. We're entering a new section from the Lundy Bancroft book, Why Does He Do That? Inside the Minds of Angry and Controlling Men. This section is called The Making of an Abusive Man. This one will stick to the male part, even though a female can also be an abusive person, so keep that in mind. It begins with some quotes.
We pass a magazine rack, and he points at the cover of the Cosmopolitan and says, "Why don't you look like her?"
His favorite song is that Guns N' Roses tune, "I used to love her, but I had to kill her." He puts that on all the time.
His daddy treats his mommy the same way he treats me.
You should see the way he and his buddies talk about ladies. They speak about them like they're pieces of meat.
Then Mr. Bancroft begins with a story. Once upon a time, there was a boy who grew up with a wonderful and happy dream. He was told when he was very young, as soon as he was able to understand anything, really, that there was a beautiful piece of land out on the edge of their town that was in trust for him. When he was a grown-up, it would be his very own and was sure to bring him great happiness. His family and his other relatives often described this land to him in details that made it sound like a fairyland. It would be paradise on earth. They didn't tell him precisely when it would actually be his, but the implication was that it would be around the age of 16 or 20. In his teenage years, this boy began to visit that property and walk around it and dream of owning it. 2 to 3 years later, the time had come for him to try to take it on. But by this point, he'd noticed some unsettling things. Every so often he'd see people hiking on this land or picnicking on the acres of it, and when he would tell them not to come there without his permission, they refused to leave and insisted that it was public property. When he questioned the relatives about all this, they reassured him, "Oh no, the claim to that land is yours." In his late adolescence and early 20s, he became more and more frustrated about the failure of the townspeople to respect his ownership of this property. He tried first to manage the problem through compromise. He had set up a special section of the area as a public picnic place and even spent his own money to put up some picnic tables. On the rest of the land, he had a sign up that said, "No trespassing," and he expected the people to honor the rules of these signs. But to his shock and amazement, the residents showed no signs of gratitude for his concession. Instead, they continued to help themselves to the enjoyment of every part of that land, including that area marked "No trespassing." This little boy finally could not tolerate these intrusions on his birthright anymore. So he started to scream and to swear at the people who trespassed, and in this way succeeded in scaring a few of them away. The others who were not cowed by him became targets of physical assault. And when his aggression did not completely clear the area, he bought himself a gun and began shooting it just to frighten these people, not to actually shoot them. The townspeople came to the conclusion that this guy is loco crazy. One particular courageous local resident decided to spend a day searching through the town real estate records and was able to establish what so many people had already suspected. The property was indeed public. The claim made by the boy's family on his behalf was the product of a legend, a misconception, basically a lie, without any basis in the documentary record. When the boy was confronted with this evidence, he only became more furious. He was convinced that the people in the town had conspired to alter these records and that they were out to get him and prevent him from his most cherished dream. Many years afterwards, his behavior remained erratic. It sometimes seemed like he had accepted having been misled during this childhood, but then later he would erupt again in efforts to regain control of the land through lawsuits. He also created booby traps on this land designed to injure the visitors. and employed any other strategies he could think of. The relatives encouraged him to maintain his belligerence, telling him,
"Don't let those fools take away what is yours."
Many years went by before he was able to accept the fact that his dream would never be realized, and that he would just have to learn to share that land. And over that period he went through a painful and ultimately freeing process of gradually accepting how horribly misled he had been and how destructive his behavior became as a result. Okay, well, in order to know how to foster change in abusive men, individuals and communities need to understand not only how abusive thinking works, which has been Lundy Bancroft's focus so far, but also where it comes from. Overcoming the scourge of relationship abuse demands attention to the root causes of the very problem. Now, the story we just listened to was a metaphor for the childhood social process that can produce an abusive person. As he's explained in previous chapters, abusiveness has very little to do with psychological problems and everything to do with values and beliefs. Where do a boy's values about partner relationships come from? The sources are many. The most important ones, of course, would be the family that he's grown up in, the neighborhood he lives in, the television shows he watches, and the books that he reads, the jokes that he hears, and the messages that he gets from the toys he's given, and his most influential adult role models. Now, these role models are not important just for which behaviors they exhibit, but also for the values they teach him in words and expectations that they instill in him for the future. So, in summary, a boy's values develop from the full range of his experiences within his culture. Every boy's socialization is unique. Even two siblings that are close in age do not learn the identical values. Culture is thus transmitted on a continuum. In, for example, a religious culture, some kids will grow up to be devout believers, while others will reject the faith completely, and most of them will fall within the average of the level of religious observance for the community in general. Where the child may land in this continuum partly depends on how strong a particular set of messages he or she receives from the social environment and also from his or her personal predispositions. The rebel in the family, for example, that'll be the atheist, while the kid who's most focused on pleasing everybody might become more religious than they are. The next section is how a boy learns abuse. Children begin at a very young age, certainly by the time they're 3 or maybe even sooner, to absorb the rules and traditions of their culture. Now, this type of learning continues throughout their childhood and through their adolescence. Their family that they're growing up in is usually the strongest influence, at least for the first few years, but it's only one among many. These kids' sense of proper and improper ways to behave, the moral perceptions of right and wrong, and their beliefs about sex roles are brought to them by the TV, brainwashing media, videos, popular songs, children's books, and jokes. They observe behaviors that are modeled by friends and by relatives, including adults to which they are close. They watch to see which behaviors are rewarded by making somebody popular, for example, as opposed to those that are condemned. By the age of 4 or 5, they start to express curiosity about the police and regarding laws, both of which play an important role in shaping their moral sense. During adolescence, young people have increasing access to the wider culture, and there is less filtering by adults. And then, of course, they are also subject to the rapidly growing influence of all the peers around them. So even after reaching adulthood, people continue to read the social messages that surround them in the culture, and they adjust their values and beliefs in response to what is considered socially acceptable. Now, the next video will be a question that Lundy Bancroft asked us. Where did he learn to be that way? So stay tuned.
I am the Narcopath, and I am being held here against my will. To get out, I've been told I gotta give you another confession. If it means my freedom so I can get another target, I'm all for it.
During our dating, you kept reminding me when I lied to you. which I still don't understand.
Who cares if I lied to you? It ain't like you never lied before. What, are you perfect? In fact, I remember the time you lied to me. So I kept bringing that up every time you brought up the fact that I lied, even though your lie was innocent. You said you happened to be walking down the street where I worked as a waitress, happened to walk in because you ran out of gas and thought you could use the phone, and really the truth was you were interested in me. You had the hots for me. So, that was a sweet lie, I guess, but it's a lie. So I would bring that up every time you accused me of lying, even though I did, and every time you'd say you couldn't believe it, and I would think, well, get over it. Why can't you accept that I lied? You lied. You think you're perfect? Oh, I don't think so.
So, let me break it down for you, in case you didn't figure it out during our relationship.
Fact is, I am a whore. I have sex with anybody I can find, male, female, or she-male, and I'm going to be an escort. You need to get over it. Just accept the fact it didn't work out. I know I told you I was traditional and Christian and believed in one person forever, but honey, that was an act. So get over it. And you have fun with that act. I know you're lying about it too. You're just as bad as I am. I know you are. Love has flown all along. I said, I wonder why you left me. Oh, Sandy, baby. Someday, when I do it gone. Someday, some way, our two worlds will be one. Hi, good evening. I'm Sandy Hoaxtard. Welcome to Channel 5 Fake News. Tonight, I've got some real news for you. How do you like that?
Oops. Oh dear. Cut, please. Cut.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, for me. Oh, thank you. Good evening. Tonight on TV5 Fake News, as I stated, we're covering real news. And it has to do with climate change. That's right. That old global warming. Well, I'm here to tell you, it is a complete scam. That's right. My college professor even told me that 20 years ago when I was in college studying to be a news anchor. The hype you're hearing about climate change is simply a way to punish the poor. It's an invented, non-scientific theory. Let me tell you, if you've got friends in high places and you're trying to push an agenda through, you can pay the right scientists to say the right thing. But the fact is, there ain't no global warming. Our planet's cooler now than it had been centuries ago. So it's actually global cooling, if you want to be exact. The polar ice caps are actually increasing. They're not melting away. Polar bears are also increasing in numbers. Heat waves have actually diminished, not increased over the last several years. There's not been any uptick in the number or strength of storms, with the exception of the California fires. That's a different story. Now, if there's going to be directed energy weapons like that, well, yes, there's going to be global warming. But that's not regular people like you and me breathing our CO2. No, that's evil people trying to destroy the creation. So yeah, it's man-made in that case, but nothing to do with us. The global warming scam is simply propaganda dreamed up by retarded Vice President Al Gore, of the past, of course, not the current president. What's sick about this is it's like a conspiracy because there is no global warming the way they're saying it, again, except for the directed energy weapons. As I said, you can pay any scientist to deliver the results you want, so you can push through your little agenda and back it up with scientific facts. But those scientific facts are bogus. They're fake. They're money hungry. They have nothing to do with reality. And what's disgusting is if you go like I did tonight to Wikipedia, that That and Snopes are garbage. They're simply pushing the propaganda agenda. They have nothing to do with the facts. So basically, if you see something on Snopes and it says false, well, you can pretty much read that as true. Same thing goes with Wikipedia. It has to do with controversial subjects such as climate change. Because it's a joke. And it has the nerve to try to claim that we found no instances of any problems with any of the scientific information we're given. It's like, yeah, because it was paid for to say whatever the crap it is it says. It ain't true. But it's a way to try to scam us out of more money, and it's a joke. And what does the vice president know about weather, honestly? Please, are you kidding? He ain't no meteorologist. Don't buy it. Don't fall for it. That's tonight's news brief. I'm Sandy Hoaxtard. Nice to see you. Until next time, Happy New Year. Is the camera off? I'm ready to get out of these clothes with you, honey. Thanks for the roses. That really made my day. I can't believe people are believing this global warming crap. I'm so glad I did that story tonight. How would you like to do some global warming tonight? Glad this camera's off. We can get it on. Oh, come here. Oh. Oof.